All right, let's get into AJ Dybantsa because he's the superstar. He is the guy that everyone loves to talk about. He is the guy that is Goodman's probably the favorite player in this class in terms of like the kid. We had him on a podcast earlier today, and he showed his personality a little bit. He's a funny kid. I want to start with this though, Ani. Everyone is talking about him as like the next great one, right? Like, but where do you see like his comp? Where do you see his development? And where do you see his ceiling being?
When I first watched him play last year in the NBPA camp, I felt like I was watching like Andrew Wiggins, just with the fluidity of just his movement, his size, a big wing that's athletic. Like he has big time wing, like wingspan. I think it's over 7 foot and just hang time. He scores it. He has a lot of like you said, he has a lot of personality. He's charismatic. He's a funny kid. And but he just when he gets on that court, he just really just gets after you. He gives me some shades play style of Andrew Wiggins, but I think his ceiling is higher than that. I think it's way higher than that. I think he has a chance to really be an NBA All Star and a multiple time NBA All Star. I mean AJ has. I mean, obviously there's stuff he needs to work on, but he has a total package. When you talk about just physical and just skill boxes that he checks off, I think he's a multiple time All Star.
Paul George, what do you think of that?
I like that. I like that, especially
He
with a
likes
shot
that.
creator.
That's the one that AJ likes the most. That's the one he told me about last year. He said, Indiana, Paul George is kind of what he said to me a year ago. The Wiggins thing, I like physically in some ways. The difference for me is AJ shows up every game, and Wiggins did not. No, but listen, I know, Rob, you're shaking your head, but that's the truth.
No,
That's
you're
the
not
truth.
wrong. I just love how you found a way to get a shot in at Aaron Wiggins there.
Andrew Wiggins. Aaron, I'm not going to take a shot.
Right. Yeah.
I will not take a shot at Aaron Wiggins.
Yes,
I like
you're
Aaron
right.
Wiggins.
I'm sorry.
No.
How many more names do you think I can get wrong here, Jeff Borzello?
I don't know. You're at 2 so far. You're at 2, and we're 15 minutes into this thing. So my guess, the over-under is probably 5. Yeah, I like, Paul George combination. I think, again, to me, he's a little bit different because he's so explosive offensively. Like his frame doesn't give you the indication, but he is physical and he embraces the contact and he goes to the basket. That's kind of where he's most comfortable right now in some ways. He can shoot it fairly well, but even he said to us, Rob, like, that's the area I want to get better at. I know, my perimeter shots got to be a little bit more consistent at the next level, but man, that kid every game, again, kind of like Cam Boozer in some way, every way you look up and you're like, the dude puts up 20 points and he's gotten better with his passing ability and his ability to kind of give it up and make people better. I think playing with Stokes has helped, kind of develop that part of his game because Stokes is so good at that. And he knows if he gives it up, he's going to get it back. And so I just think AJ, he's bigger than Tatum now. Think about that. Yeah. He's already taller than like Jason Tatum.
He's got the broad shoulders like Tatum does.
Yep.
But your point about the physicality is a good one because I think that, at least in my mind, the difference between him and Andrew Wiggins is I think you would call Andrew Wiggins, especially when he was I remember seeing him at the Nike Global Academy back in 2012 at Bishop O'Connell. And like the thing about him was he was so twitchy, right? Like everything he did was explosive. Everything he did, it felt like he was going to jump through the roof every single time he went up to try to dunk a ball or anytime he went up to try to shoot a jump shot, right? And I feel like AJ, I don't think he has quite that level of athleticism, but I think everything he does is more controlled and more calculated. And he's just so good at kind of throwing a pump fake, putting his shoulder into somebody to create a little bit of space and getting a shot off that way. Like I feel like, I don't know if like basketball IQ, Ani, is the right way to put it, but I feel like there's a level of understanding in how to be a professional scorer that he has that a lot of guys that are those 6'9" athletic big wings don't necessarily. Does that make sense? Am I making sense here?
Right. Yeah. Like the way I just think he's like a quick, like, thinker, processor. Me, like he can just kind of make a quick decision and it's the right decision as far as like scoring and going to his spots. Where most guys like at his size, like it's more like mechanical, or you can tell they're really thinking about having to make this play or that play. I think it just comes really natural to him. And so, yeah, it's like IQ feel. Like I just think he just can just make a decision that quick and make a read and just get it done.
Yeah, Goodman. We've seen play. We mentioned Andrew Wiggins, and you mentioned the 2013 class. Like, how does AJ ensure that he's going to end up being the guy that his ceiling could be instead of, I don't want to say like Andrew Wiggins is a bust because I hate when people have those conversations. He's going to make $300 million in his career. He's won a ring. I think he is probably not quite the ceiling that we thought, but he ended up being a very good player at the NBA, and that's what you would expect with drafting where he was. How does AJ ensure that he gets to that potential? Like one NBA scout told me, he has the chance to be the best player in the NBA at some point in his career if it all pans out for him.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's just working and you worry a little bit, right? Last year was his first year prolific prep in Napa Valley. This year he goes to Utah Prep. He's bouncing around a little bit. Now that's kind of par for the course these days for a lot of these kids, but you got to make sure mentally, right? It's just the mental part of the game for him, and he loves it. But again, now it's a little bit different than a year ago because now everybody's pulling at him all the time, and he's traveling all the time. And you asked him this question. You said, listen, with all this travel, how do you find time to get in the gym like you talked about a year ago, which was getting in early and staying in the gym and working on your game. And that's got to be something where you got to be mature, right? You got to be mature and you got to love it. And I'm not sure Andrew Wiggins ever loved it. Right. Not like this kid.
Yeah, I think AJ does. And I'm not going to
Yeah,
sit here and
he
pretend.
loves it.
I'm not going to pretend like we're best friends like you like to do, Goodman. But the sense that I get from him is that it's not a show. It's not a front, right? Like he actually wants to live in the gym. And to his credit, we saw him play a morning game. I believe it was a 9 a.m. tip off, right?
Showed up
on Thursday at Peach Jam. We had we recorded the podcast at noon. And then after that, he was going to go get a workout in that night. And the night before, he had gotten a workout in with, I believe it was Paul George and CP3 there. So the kid is putting in the work. Alabama, Auburn, BYU, Arkansas are the four schools that I heard the most. He has no list yet. Goodman, let's go to you first. Do you have an update on what we can know and when we can know it in terms of his recruitment? And then Ani, I want your kind of ideas on where you think the best fit for him would be. If you were advising him, if you were Ace, right? If you were his dad, where would you be trying to get him to go and get him to end up? Goodman first.
Yeah, I mean, I think we're guessing at this point, but those four certainly seem like they'll be in the mix. What'd you say? Alabama, Auburn, BYU, Arkansas, Kentucky, maybe. I could see those five being a part of his final eight. Obviously, Ace has done an incredible job as his father, kind of balancing, being protective of him. Yet again, I mean, you talk to the kid, and it was like, you remember I asked them, I said to Ace, anything we need to worry about asking him about, because it's a high school kid and you don't want to put him in a position, a bad position. Ace was like, no, whatever. And he trusts AJ, even though he does control the recruitment right now. Ace does. I think that's going to change once it gets down to 8 schools. And AJ talked about that. He said it's overwhelming right now. You got 30, 40 offers, whatever it is. You can't talk to every coach. Mm-hmm. But when it gets down to 8, I think you'll see him play a more pivotal role in his own recruitment. And I think those are 5 schools that I could see being in the mix. And certainly, hey, listen, NIL, we know is going to be important here. Is it going to be the end all be all? I don't know. I don't know if he goes to the highest bidder. I hope it's a combination, right? Obviously, he's going to go somewhere where NIL is significant. But also, I hope he goes somewhere kind of like Brandon Miller did. And I know the numbers were different. Okay. I know the numbers were different a few years ago, but Brandon Miller took less money to go to a place in which the playing style really favored showcasing his skills.
If you haven't heard by now, we have partnered with BetMGM Sportsbook. We're going to be using BetMGM lines to make all of our picks, and we'll have special offers for the listeners and the viewers of the Field of 68 throughout the year. If you haven't signed up for BetMGM yet, you can use bonus code FIELD, and you will get up to a $1,500 first bet offer on your first wager with BetMGM. The best part, all you need to do is deposit and bet $10 of your own hard-earned money to be eligible. Here's how you make it work. Download the BetMGM app and sign up using that bonus code FIELD. Deposit at least $10 and place your first wager on any game, and you will receive up to $1,500 in bonus bets if your bet loses. Just make sure that you use that bonus code FIELD when you sign up. BetMGM is going to have some fun offers available throughout the NBA playoffs. Bet insurance tokens, odds boost, and what I love, a nice parlay booster too from time to time, as well as a ridiculous array of player prop bets for any sport that you could possibly imagine betting on. BetMGM is and always will be the king of the prop bet. So go download the BetMGM app, use the bonus code FIELD, and sign up today. And while I've got you, a quick request. The best way to support the Field of 68 content that you get for free is to engage with us. Rate and review the podcast. Like and share the YouTube videos. Tell your friends about us. It all helps in a world where the algorithm is king. And now, back to the show. Go ahead, Ani. Where do you think the best fit is?
Ooh, I mean, I'll give an answer, but like a kid like him, I just think that he's going to be really good wherever he goes. Me personally, I like Auburn. I like how, like, just with how Bruce Pearl just really utilizes like big wings. I really do. I like Auburn as a fit for him. Just play style, and I think he'll be able to play through mistakes again, even in Alabama. Like you talked about, Brandon Miller got to really play through mistakes, opportunities, and I mean just to play. I like those two schools a lot, just because they kind of have a history. They have guys that it's yeah, you could be this because we've done this recently. And the other schools like Arkansas with Cal, I mean, obviously we know what he's done with freshmen. But I like those two a lot, be honest with you.
Yeah, I really, you mentioned Auburn. You see what happened with Jabari Smith and what happened with Isaac. Why am I blanking on his name? Isaac Okoro, right? And just, even Jalen Williams, the development that he made over the course of the last year. Bruce knows how to use those guys that are big fours and how to utilize them properly. The one thing I do want to touch on real quick is we mentioned BYU there, and BYU in the same conversation as Alabama, Auburn, Arkansas, Kentucky, Kansas, like all of the big schools. Seeing BYU in that list is a little bit interesting, Jeff. Why is it there?
Well, because he's going to Utah Tech or whatever it is this
Utah
year.
Prep. Utah Tech is a
Utah
college.
Prep, whatever. Utah Tech, sorry, the college. There's my first snafu of the pod. Yeah, I just, and they're going to have money. They're going to have money. New coach Kevin Young. They got a ton of money there. I just wonder if going to Utah Prep could hurt him in a way from wanting to go to BYU. I feel like being in the state for 8 months now coming up, he could be like, you know what? I want a little bit more action than being in Utah. Maybe I'm wrong, but I think it could backfire. I don't think he ends up at BYU. I'd be surprised if he ends up at BYU at the end of the day. I could see again. Remember too, Alabama assistant coach Preston Murphy coached AJ when he was younger on the circuit. So one of the few coaches really that AJ knows well at this point in his recruitment is Preston Murphy from Alabama. Bruce Pearl also from Massachusetts. Calipari speaks for himself in terms of the amount of guys that he's put forth. And Kentucky's got a big name. And I'm not sure Kentucky's definitely going to be in the Final Eight, but they've obviously got the power of big Blue Nation.
Yeah. BYU is the amount of money in and around Salt Lake City right now is large, and there are a lot of people in around the university that really love BYU athletics and don't have a problem cutting a check when they need to cut a check to be able to make sure that BYU athletics are going to be good. And I don't think
they won't get outbid for sure.
Yes, that is 100% true. All right. Before we move on to Darren Peterson, just real quick, Tyron Stokes, number one player in 2026, Ani. I'm going to start you with this. Jeff and I really struggled coming up with a comparison for him in terms of like what he could be as a player, because he's like 6'7", 230, class of 2026. Everything you want kind of like out of a small ball four prototype power forward in terms of his ability to rebound, his athleticism, his burst. Like he's an NFL tight end right now at 16 years old. But he's also like a point forward, right? Like he had a
Right.
triple double in a game we were watching. He had 8 assists in another game that we were watching. He's sensational at getting the ball at the defensive glass and going coast to coast and finishing at the rim. A little right hand heavy, but like he's unique in the sense that I can't think of somebody that has like that combination of skill sets readily off the top of my head.
Yeah, if you like a comp, I think he's like a multitude of some guys. I'm gonna kind of give a throwback. He was one of my favorite players to watch. Obviously, his career didn't pan out, but like in that point forward mold with high IQ, I feel like Royce White. I loved watching Royce White.
You just made the exact same comparison that Goodman made, right? Oh,
Really?
he's going to take so many victory laps here. You could have said anybody else, Ani.
Ani, great minds think alike, and
100%.
the third person in this pod just gets names wrong.
Oh man, go ahead, finish your thought. I'm sorry,
but like Royce White, just like his feel, like obviously Royce wasn't much of a shooter, so I think like I always look at he's like the updated, like modern day version, one that can really make shots and shoot. And but I just like how he rebounds, his push up the floor, makes passes. He plays with like that level of like edge and nastiness to him, which I think that really allows him to be a really good player. So I like Royce White. I mean, now people would probably I've heard Draymond, but not really. I just like the Royce White comparison because I think he's a legit point forward that can make shots. And just that mean streak he has makes him just a hell of a player.
yeah. To me, no, you can never compare someone to Draymond because nobody will have the understanding of basketball, like the basketball
Right.
brain. That's where he was a unicorn. His ability to understand and read the game. Go ahead, Goodman. Take your victory
who's not a
lap.
bad one? You know who's not a bad one? And again, he's not quite as long as. How tall do you think he is?
6'7", 6'8".
Yeah.
AJ's got like an inch on him. So whatever you think AJ is.
AJ is like 6'10" with shoes, by the way.
Yeah. So Tyron
I
is
would
probably
say
like 6'8" in shoes, 6'8.5" in shoes.
All right. So how about a little bit of Julius Randle? A little bit. Not the again, he's a better passer than Randle is. We know that. But like Randle can handle it now, and he always could. And he's gotten to be a better passer, I think, in the NBA.
I actually really like that. Really like that.
Like he's got some of that Julius Randle in him too. But again, he's different. He's again really, really good passer. Has thinned out. He's become much more explosive than he was a year ago. I didn't think he had a great body a year ago. And he's super explosive now. Rebounds, can take it off the glass and go with it. He gives it up. He makes people better. Not a great shooter, like you said. Can make, he's streaky. Like in Indy at EYBL, he had a game where, like, I'm telling you, it was one of the top 10 games I've ever seen anybody play in AU basketball. He did absolutely everything. He made threes. He distributed. He was explosive, dunking on dudes. At Peach Jam, he didn't really shoot it great. And I still think that's the part of his game that, again, he and AJ both have to improve, but AJ is a better shooter than Stokes is.